So there was actually a recent poll done by a UK firm called Ipsos Mori on global trends. And one of the areas that they polled was on global opinion trends when it comes to the environment. They did polling in 20 countries, right? So they actually did polling about the environment, and their polling about their environment found that the United States of America, leads the world in climate change denial. I'm not kidding. We lead the world in climate change denial and ignorance. And I know you're shocked. But it's due. What a proud distinction for us to have as Americans, right? We are a leader in denying science. So here's one of the samples of the poll questions that this poll did. Again, they did it in 20 countries. It's agree or disagree question. So agree or disagree, quote, the climate change we are currently seeing is largely the result of human activity. Agree or disagree? Again, here's the question, agree or disagree? The climate change we are currently seeing is largely the result of human activity. Agree or disagree? So, in the poll, in China, 93% agreed with this statement. 93% agreed that humans are largely responsible for climate change. Argentina came in second with 84% agreeing. Italy, Spain, and Turkey, France, India all followed in the 80%, around 80% of those polled in their country agreeing with the statement. Then you had Brazil, Belgium, South Korea, South Africa, Sweden, Germany, Canada, and Japan, all following somewhere between 79% and 70% agreeing, saying, yes, humans are at the cause of this. So between 79 and 70. Then you get into the 60 percentile here, where you have Poland, Russia, Australia, and then Great Britain coming in at the second lowest at 64% agreement. Great Britain coming in second with only 64% agreeing with this fact. And coming in dead last, I know you're shocked to find this, coming in dead last with only 54% agreeing is us. The good old United States of America. USA, USA, I feel like waving a small flag right now just to celebrate our ignorance. I know some of you might be thinking, wow, 54%, with how stupid our country is, I'm surprised it's actually that high. But seriously, of the 20 countries that they polled, we came in dead last by a big margin. It doesn't make you proud to know how unbelievably ignorant our country is. And we are so, it really just goes to show how failed our education system is, how much our media has failed us, how close to half of us are blissfully thrilled to deny science. Close to half, 46% don't believe in science. Amazing. It's amazing. If this poll is accurate, if you see somebody on the street and if they believe in the climate of science change, science of climate change, okay, if you see someone on the street and they believe in climate change, statistically speaking, you probably don't. Isn't that wild? Isn't that crazy? I mean, look, here are some of the other agree or disagree statements. Quote, the government is just using environmental issues as an excuse to raise taxes. Agree or disagree? Guess what? 50%, 1 out of 2 Americans agreed with that statement. And of course they did. Of course they agreed with that. The Ayn Rand right-wing monsters who gutted our educational system, who bought our media, who bought our politicians, they can celebrate. Their mission is almost accomplished here. Half of Americans polled think environmental regulations are just because the government wants to raise taxes. Mission accomplished, Koch brothers. Well done. You've tricked half of America into not believing in science. Here's another one, agree or disagree. The climate change we are currently seeing is a natural phenomenon that happens from time to time. Agree or disagree? 52%. 52% of Americans agreed with that, leading the way in ignorance of this poll yet again. We're in some serious trouble here, folks. Big trouble. I mean, we are facing an impending climate disaster, and half of us do not believe that it's real, who think it's just an excuse for the government to tax us all. Yuck. Half of us. What the hell are we supposed to do with that? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to deal with that? How are we supposed to actually prepare for the impacts of climate change when half of our population doesn't even believe in science. Let's move on, though, from the ignorant population of the United States to the ignorant and bought-off politicians that the dirty energy industries have bought and sold. So you may remember another story here. Back in May, we talked about how Republicans in the House of Representatives passed a bill that prohibited the Pentagon from acknowledging or planning for the effects of climate change. We've actually, we talked about this on the show a ton. The Pentagon has, for decades, a long time, talked about and been studying and planning and saying that climate change is actually a threat to U.S. security. Climate change is going to destabilize the world, and the Pentagon knows that. They do studies on that all the time. This is something that happens, like, the study comes out like every 3 years, and it's got even more drastic as time's gone on. The Pentagon does believe that climate change is happening, and they do. So they know it's coming. So Salon has a story. The House of Representatives voted to say that that the Pentagon can't talk about climate change or plan for climate change anymore. So, moving on from that, that was a few months ago, the House has apparently passed, according to Salon, another bill passed by the House that reads, quote, it prohibits both the U.S. Department of Energy and the Army Corps of Engineers from spending to, quote, design, implement, administer, or carry out specified assignments regarding climate change, end quote. Look, I'm frankly surprised the bill didn't include exact language that instructed officials to officially bury their heads in sand. Literally, bury your heads in the sand, scientists. I'm surprised the Republicans didn't ask them to do that. I mean, look, how are we going to fight this? How are we going to beat this? We have politicians ordering scientists and agencies who are charged with keeping our country safe and functional and keeping our coastline safe. They are ordering them, literally, to ignore science. How frightening is that? How scary is that? And look, I want to cover one last story here. So while that bill, I mean, it was passed by the House, but it's not going to be signed into law. It won't pass the Senate, and President Obama wouldn't sign something like that. So let's talk again about how we have the story of one political party, the Republican Party, who most members flat out deny science. They are flat earth troglodytes, right? So that's one side of them. We have these flat earthers on one side, Republicans, and then we have Democrats, politicians who say that climate change is real, who say it's a threat to us, it's a threat to our children and grandchildren, it's a threat to future generations, who say we must act on climate change now, who then go on to have policies that do the exact opposite. So my buddy Steve Horn over at DeSmog Blog has this story, reading from DeSmog Blog, quote, President Obama's Interior Department gave the green light on Friday, July 18, to companies to deploy seismic air guns to examine the scope of the Atlantic coast offshore for oil and gas reserves. It is the first time in over 30 years that the oil and gas industry is permitted to do geophysical data collection along the Atlantic coast, end quote. So, folks, it's happening. Barack Obama is preparing to open up the Atlantic coast for oil and gas drilling. Drill, baby, drill. That is, Obama is, we mock Sarah Palin all we want. Barack Obama actually is the drill, baby, drill president. He's opened up more offshore drilling than any president ever. Not only that, speaking on that exact thing, though, reading from the Smog Blog again, quote, though decried by environmentalists, another offshore oil and gas announcement was made the same week, has flown under the radar. Over 21 million acres of the Gulf of Mexico offshore oil and gas reserves will be up for lease August the 20th in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the Superdome, end quote. He's opening up even more of the Gulf Coast, where you may remember a little something called the BP oil disaster happened, the Deepwater Horizon. You guys all remember that, right? That happened not that long ago. President Obama is opening up the Gulf to even more offshore drilling. 21 million additional acres are going up at the Superdome of all places on August the 20th. So I guess the question is, what's worse? Flat earthers who deny science, who say climate change isn't real, who act like troglodytes, act like cavemen. What's worse, flat earther Republicans or politicians who say climate change is real, but whose policies make climate change and the climate crisis even worse. Drill, baby, drill. We'll be right back.